situation. And you have to wonder if this starts to like turn into a slog, we end up going 3, 4, 5, 6, and then to the 7th game, with Beasty already being 2 ahead, do we start to see that fatigue set in? And I'm not just saying all this because Kasva is an old man. This can happen to even the young lads as well.
Exactly. The thing is that fatigue is there for both players, but Beasty can at least say that, hey, I won the game. As we jump into game number 3, it is Boulder Bay time, not a map that we have seen very frequently, a map that players sort of dislike for many reasons, and we'll have up north Beasty playing as the Blue Rus, and down south we're going to have the unconventional appearance of a yellow for Kasva over here, playing as the Rus as well.
Yes, that's because Kasva has had enough of getting the crap kicked out of him and has gone full anime and decided to go Super Saiyan. So that's what this is representing. This is a new form of Kasva, one that will surely take full control of Series Lidakor and give us somewhat of a competition, because right now this is getting a little bit Beasty favored with 2 points to the board for him, and Kasva looking a little bit helpless. To pick Rus here on Boulder Bay, though, this is kind of standardized. It's kind of wacky. I think a lot of people are still kind of thinking that France is, you know, king of Boulder Bay. But if you actually were to poll the top 100 players and ask them who they think the best Civ is on Boulder Bay, I would say about 80% of them would say Rus right now. Rus feel very powerful, and it's all about that transition immediately at the beginning of Feudal, converting as much of your fleet as possible, and the fact that you can get good bang for buck, because although Hulks one-on-one are very good, if you reach a critical mass of these archer ships as the Rus, you outzerg your opponent, you block them off entirely, and you easily escalate this game into an easy dub.
The thing with the Rus is that the magical play for them on water is that they can always balance the amount of combat ships and fishing ships they make, because they just make fishing ships and only convert the required amount into combat ships. With any other Civ, you have to make a decision. If I add a fishing ship here, it means I'm not making a combat ship. So if you mess up that balance, you are done. You either don't have a good water eco, or you will just fall behind in ship numbers. But when it comes to the Rus, you can only convert, or you can convert your fishing eco to combat ships whenever needed. And you can just wait until you actually need it and just use them as fishing eco. In fact, if you win the water, you can even convert them back to fishing ships. So that flexibility on the water makes them one of the most appealing choices in these water-heavy maps over here. And it looks like we do not have a dock being placed here by Beastie, so he's got something else on his mind. Or am I blind? Okay, am I blind?
Yeah, no,
there's the dock on the right side.
Yeah, he went for like, it's kind of a debate because, well, for a start, he didn't have good like deep fish, but also Kasva's not going to look here, whereas he'll look to the west first. But just to kind of recap on what you were saying, for anyone who like kind of lost track of that in the middle of it, convert more than a priest yelling "Wololol" is kind of the name of the game on the sea for the Rus. It's very powerful. One cool thing we haven't really seen utilized too much, it rarely actually comes into the equation for the Rus, is if you do solidify control on the waterfront, you can actually not only convert like your attack ships back to fishing boats, you can convert them to trade ships as well. We don't really see Rus play into trade, but it is kind of an optimized way to kind of shift across to a trade-based eco. Something that I'd be excited to see, because I never get to see it with Rus. Even when we get, like, you know, full control, quadruple docks, them dropped where BC's put them, they still never consider it. It's almost like, unless you have that extra leverage of, say, what the French have around their sea trade, no one wants to actually do it. So we'll see if that comes into play, though.
So weird.
Yeah, it is weird,
it's so
right?
weird. Like, I've been asking players why they're not doing that, because it's an insane amount of resource income. Like, the travel distance between your docks and this neutral trade post is quite big. So even if you're not playing the French, that trade brings its investment back really fast, and it's a very difficult place to raid for your opponent. So it's actually very surprising that most players are not going for trade at all on the water. Probably not early game, but once you secure the water control, adding a couple of trade ships can actually boost your eco quite a bit.
I wonder if they're like paranoid about the fact it costs 2 pop cap, maybe? Because like I think the logic is like you use trade to scale into late game, right? So the fact that you use 2 pop cap out is like you need it in ultra late game situations, but when you're talking like between that 30-40 minute mark, it almost feels like it's just a detriment to be spending 2 of your pop cap per one of these ships. I don't think like it's a bad trade. Like if we would actually like average out the travel time and the return resources, I think it's a good investment. But it might even just be something as simple as the initial investment of 400 resources is far too high, because that is actually an insane amount to pay for an eco unit in Age of Empires.
Now, there is a difference in the approach of the two players. Kasva is aging up with the Golden Gate, allowing him to sell the gold, or sell the food that he has accumulated. Whereas on the other side, there's a Kremlin coming in for Beasty, and the Feudal Age is much faster for Kasva. Beasty's in trouble because those fishing ships are about to be converted to combat vessels.
Yeah, this is going to be problematic. Beasty's going to have to duck and dive away from this, but Kasva, he sees this The scout, it snitched on everything. He knows where he's going as he converts his fleet. This is going to be problematic. Now, the important part about why Beasty done this, by the way, is because he's looking to optimize his fishing, his boat fleet. Because remember, they cost more wood than gold. So he wants to be able to convert more of them more quickly and stay ahead. The problem is he's taking such heavy hits already to his fishing boats as he tries to convert over. Remember, this takes 20 seconds, so you're going to lose a few, and he instantly calls GG. He gets spotted out, he gets snitched on, and that is enough to finally give Kasva a point. I guess Super Saiyan mode really does work.
Easy clap, as the saying goes. Well,
Wow.
that game, I think we had 1 unit killed. Yeah, Kasva won this game with 1 unit killed out here. Absolutely ridiculous. And it just turns out to be like, this is the reason why players don't play this map very often. It's just very punishing, especially in these Rus mirrors. Just imagine the French doing this. The French can't do this. They need to make a combat ship. As they reach feudal age, that combat vessel, the Hawk, has to sail all the way up. The opponent can sail away, but when it comes to these Lodya ships, you can push your fishing eco up already, and the moment you hit feudal age, you have your window to convert them and start pushing your opponent. And really, it just came down to the fact that Kasva had a slightly better optimized build order in Dark Age. He beat his opponent to feudal age by like 25 seconds, and ultimately, that's enough to give him the power spike. And Beasty knows very well that the moment he loses water, he's screwed, especially because he even went up in the Kremlin. So it's not like he's getting a gigantic boost from, let's say, the Golden Gate for some sort of fast castle play and then push on land. Like, the Kremlin, of course, would boost his wood income, but what are you even gonna do with wood in feudal age if you don't have the water?
Exactly. I mean, like, honestly, Kasva won that game, but I'm wondering if we do give the point to him or to whoever designed the map seed generation, because it has to be highlighted that the deepwater fish were not well situated for Beasty. He had no flexibility, had no options. That's why he went so far to the east. He could have went west, but like we said, that's probably, like, you're gambling, but likely Kasva's going to look on the left before he looks on the right. So you're essentially just trying to cover yourself by a little bit more time. The reason that Beasty goes into the Kremlin is because of that choice. He knows he's behind. He knows the only way he's going to be good is if he pads this, gets into feudal, and then is able to push more of these fishing boats and these archer ships. That's one of the big edges, because remember, like, if you build a Kremlin, yes, you're missing out on the scalability as minutes go on with the Golden Gate, but what you get in return initially is you get a free wooden fortress, which means you're getting 20% more wood dropped off very quickly. And the whole idea is when you're in a mirror matchup, what it usually comes down to is if both of you are doing the exact same thing and everything else is the same, it's like, who has that slight lead in X or Y, right? Like, can I get 1 more ship out, 2 more ships out? And I think that's what Beasty was aiming for, realizing that because he got such a crappy map seed generation to start with, there wasn't really another choice. If you go Golden Gate, you're trailing in this game, and that means you're also then going to be forced to probably forfeit the waterfront, and really that is too big of a deal. I mean, even after the nerfs, it feels like the deep water fish are still just so damn good, and I've highlighted the biggest problem you have to consider is not even the fact that, like, the fishing rates were just outright broken. Like, conceptually, the idea of what makes water good is the fact that you're able to create a secondary TC for 150 wood. That's how you have to imagine it. Yes, you pay a little bit more for these fishing boats, but because they gather at a better rate, they basically pay for the additional cost over a villager. Meanwhile, you are having a second building that constructs resource generating units. That is so invaluable. And I think it's why being locked out of water is still such a very oppressive element of Age of Empires 4, and one that we still haven't really cracked from a design perspective.
100% agreed with that. The thing is that at this point, if you don't go water, you are done. And ideally on a hybrid map situation, you would have to make a decision whether you go for water or not. This being said, we are almost ready to go into game number 3, and I get the feel that as much as mentally depleting the game 2 was for Kasva, this has to be a sigh of relief for him. An easy win, not something that's exhausting, and he just got 1 game. So, you know, he was grinding very hard for that game number 2, ultimately ends up losing, and there's just that bitterness in you when you grind so much for a game and then you end up losing it. As I said, fatigue is kicking in, but your opponent is the one taking the point for that game. And then in just a couple of minutes, you just strike back, and now it's a 2-1. So I feel like this is actually like a mental reset for Kasva as we jump into game number 4.
Yeah, so I think the really big thing to speak to here is, like, you said it's like a morale booster for Kasva. I think it's actually frustrating for both players. Players want to play a good game, right? They want to feel like they earned the game. And I think there is going to be kind of a cruel in Kasva's mind when a game ends at 5 minutes. Like, how much of that was mean? How much of that was something else? Now, he will be happy. It's a point nonetheless, right? It helps. It's a booster. You need to start coming back. But I think Kasva is just going to be as frustrated as Beasty is here. He's like, I want to actually like beat him on fairly even terms to prove I'm the better player. And this is where he's going to try to do it. We shift onto Lipany in game number 4. The point system right now, 2 on the board for Beasty, 1 for Kasva. And Kasva, as a result, now looking to even up as he will whip out the Mongols on Lipany, and it'll be against Beasty playing as England.
Ooh, this is a tough one for Beasty if you think about that. We've talked about this multiple times. The English is a good civilization for Lipany. It's the open map that has quite a lot of cliffs around, so you don't need as much mobility as you need on Dry Arabia or Highview or something like that. But the problem with the English here is that in many ways, this civilization is a little too heavy on the archer department, whereas the Mongols have insane flexibility. They can play horsemen, they can just flood you with archers. So you get the feel that the civilization here is slightly more favorable for Kasva, although you never know, we might see something crazy like what we've seen from Mista yesterday, trying to go for the English horsemen.
I feel like am I playing Age of Empires, or is this Civ? Is there any sort of like natural bonuses you get for like having the Himalayas nearby your civilization? Because this is one of the funkiest rock formations I think I've witnessed on Lipany. I don't know if you noticed it to the west of Kasva's base. It's like the most redundant mountain I've ever seen on a Lipany generation. I had to highlight it because I don't think I see this very often. It's kind of crazy. It almost feels like half of this rock line should be on the other side of the map. But no, definitely a fair point what you were saying about like the England-Mongol matchup. I think when you're talking Lipany, the details you're looking at straight away, we're always looking to see if someone got a choke point focus. Nobody got a choke point focus. In fact, if someone had been placed where that stone outcropping is near the big mountain line, then that would be a jackpot for England. That's the most defendable location I've ever seen. But of course, both of them are pretty exposed. Of course, Kasva has to worry about his north side, and Beasty has to worry about both the north and the south side. So the other detail we're then looking for is the stealth forest. Is the stealth forest bulky? Is it critical? Is it scary? I'd say the stealth forest is fairly scary. And as a result, I think the person who gets an outpost down in this area first will have a huge buffer to their chances of winning this, because it's so much vision game in a critical area that would either force a mobile player to go very wide, or obviously a static player would struggle to get through here entirely. And Lombos are fantastic when they have that additional range to see you coming, right, with the vision. But at the same time, if you're able to see where the Lombos are in these shrubbery lines and they can't see you coming, you can rush them with horsemen and catch Beasty entirely off guard.
Precisely. The thing is that the stealth forest is just amplified in importance because, as you said, it is right between the two players, and Kasva has his Ovu very much exposed on the front as well, so that is definitely a target for Beasty. Otherwise, Kasva's eco will be very compact. He's got the forest and the gold mine very close to his base. Barry's outlying a little further away, but there's also a safe hunt here to work with. So Kasva has to be happy with the base layout he has, but that Ovu is a little concerning for him, and in fact, he's dropping a defensive tower close to that Ovu, not something that you see every day.
I think you need it in this game, because I was going to say one of the risks is that Beasty spots this generation and he drops an outpost right at the edge of the stealth forest, and it gives him such a great staging point because you can't do anything. Like, we talked about how important Uvus are. If you're playing Mongols and you're not playing around your Uvu, you're not playing Mongols. You're playing, I don't know, like Doggles. Like, you're a crap version of Mongols. You just don't function. It's all about boosting your early game military presence without sacrificing your economy. So that's why it's important that he never surrenders this area of the map. But this is still something that Beasty can leverage, right? If he actually moves forward with an outpost, if he gets 7, 8, 9 of these Lombos out, the cool thing about having an outpost aggressively placed at the front near the opponent's base is it's not just about the attack speed. When you have small quantities of Lombos, it's actually a safe fallback point, and it's very hard for Kasva to burn it to the ground in the initial stages with such small counts of troops.
Defensive tower is up over here for Kasva. He's been harassing the villagers on that council hall for some time, but he really wasn't able to do that much damage, of course, with that Dark Age Con. Now trying to deliver some hits on that scout, but really, the healing rate of those scouts is actually comparable to the damage output of the Dark Age Con, so you really can't do much against that, as the two players are about to hit feudal age at approximately the same time. Slightly faster for Beasty, as we got another tower being dropped, this time around by Beasty, and look at that position here.
Yeah.
That being on the hilltop will give him a tremendous amount of line of sight, and if you look at that position, there is also sort of a cliff in front of that, in a way that there is a very narrow crossing. So it's acting as a perfect natural checkpoint or choke point out there for Beasty.
Yeah, this is what I was looking for. Like, the whole idea of putting one forward now that you see that the outpost has been dropped is a little bit too risky. This, on the other hand, it's very hard for Beasty to lose it because Kasva has to run under the range of it and then run around in circles, essentially, to try and reach it. Even if he tries to move through that small choke point you talked about, he can only funnel his troops through slowly, so it delays you further and further. And you'll notice the other detail. Beasty's not done there. He's going to wrap to the west. The whole idea is to set up that network. We talked about how these are like the kings of outpost making in previous series, right? We've seen this. They do it differently, though. The Mongol player wants to condense it. He wants to press you. He wants to close you in very quickly and kind of suffocate you. While when you talk about England, it's not as much about the suffocation as it is kind of ironically about putting you in a pen and making you a sheep on a farm, right? He just wants to herd you in. He wants to keep you boxed in. He wants to dictate the flow, say where you can and cannot go, and then eventually arrive to take you to the slaughterhouse and butcher you. So that's what Beasty's looking for. He just wants that initial network that is wide enough that Kasva feels happy and safe, but as we know, with the poor sheep, they might look happy on their farms, but when they suddenly get taken to the slaughterhouse, everything gets a little bit sad and a little bit real.
Kasva is using his scout and con to overlook the base of his opponent, which under normal circumstances would be a great idea. You want to know what your opponent is up to, but this time around, by having both of those scouting units up front, he isn't going to be able to see that tower coming up behind his wood line, so he'll be completely blind about it. There's a stable coming up, and a second is also being built, so Spearman will be needed for Beasty, but he's gonna have a tower to fall back to just behind that wood line.
Yeah, and that's the other cool thing, why you see a lot of these England players pad the outpost together. In this initial phase of the game, when you've got like between 5 and 10 longbowmen, just having two close by outposts, you split them and you run them and you hide them inside the outposts. And although horsemen have better armor at the moment, you're not going to feel confident, and you're going to feel very kind of lackluster after you lose the Khan like that. That movement speed would be really important for gap closing quick enough. You did also see Beasty kind of being funky with the palings. I don't know if he's going to try and experiment with it. I feel like a lot of English players just avoid it because it's so finicky to use, but I feel like that's actually the way you level up your England to the next step, is if you can get really good at utilizing palings, because it's such an underrated element of this unit that gives a lot of protection against these early horsemen.
Stables and, in general, the Ovu being exposed is actually an absolute pain for Kasva right now. He's struggling to get that second stable up. And as you see, he's got the stone in the bank right now, but we're not seeing more horsemen come in. And that's just giving such a big window for Beast to react. In fact, there's already a proxy barracks for him. Yeah. And those longbows are just there to start picking up villagers, especially on the pastures, because it's not even the wood line that's going to be the target. It's going to be just marching close to those pastures and picking off the food villagers.
Yeah, this is actually really impressive. I like what he's doing. I feel like a lot of players, they rush this outpost forward and they don't double down on it. But when you're playing England, if you get these outposts in place, you should be double down. This is your win condition. So it's actually remarkable the way that he's done this. Now he's actually going to have a quick reinforce point, a fallback point, and he doesn't have to rely on the garrisoning outpost, which means he can continue to scale the longbow count without being threatened by these horsemen. And these horsemen are going to get uncomfortable quickly when they see the racks and they're playing around these choke points where the spears so easily and trivially buffer them off. That's the other detail. All of these buildings are now just choke points to funnel through these annoying horsemen.
And the thing is that you have double stables, so you're fully committed towards horsemen, but you don't have an answer to the spears. If you were playing something like French, you might just be able to overpower your opponent with knights, as against the spearmen. But with horsemen, you won't be able to fight effectively against spears, so you need some sort of component that's able to deal with the spears. Instead, it looks like Kasva is just going to relocate his army and try to go for a counterattack. One of the drawbacks of having a 4 barracks is that you won't be able to respond to the horsemen counterattacking you. But I feel like if Beast is able to get a defensive barracks up as well, and just get a couple of spears going to defend his base with, he's gonna have this game.
Yeah, this is the risk of proxy basing, right? This is actually really well played by Kasva. I would have preferred to have seen 2 or 3 horsemen move to the south because these longbows have been running through unimpeded for a long time. And Kasva, as you can see the scout now fighting, has had vision of it the entire time and allowed it to continue. But instead, he goes towards diving the base. He'll force them off the goal, but I don't think you care. Beasty doesn't actually need a tech up. He just needs to close the game now. And because you allow him to get another outpost this close to your TC, this game is about to get incredibly uncomfortable for Kasva. It also denies him for easily moving across and defending his military expansion. Right now, this outpost is really all that stands between Beasty and victory.
And those arrow slits are just coming in clutch right now for Kasva. If it wasn't there, that tower would be gone, and so would be the stables and the Ovu. And that would be the end of Kasva. And the thing is that the moment Kasva has to return to defend, it's an absolute disaster for him. Because, as we talked about this, he can't take this fight right now. He's got about 10 horsemen against 6 hardened spearmen, soon to be 7. And soon he's going to have issues accessing food. Whereas for Beasty, as long as he's able to just make sure he doesn't lose a tremendous amount of villagers to those horsemen, he's going to be fine. And Beasty, although he cannot see the horseman in the stealth forest, I get the feel that he knows their approximate location, so he knows exactly that he isn't gonna get pushed in the next couple of seconds.
Yeah, he knows, like, basically the only choice you have to try and sneak up on Beasty is to go for his base again. And that's what Kasva's going to look to do, is he wraps to the south side this time. But the TC is here, and remember, although you have that additional ranged armor, it's double the arrows coming out from England. In the meantime, arrows coming out plenty from the Lombos. They're slowly poking and prodding their way through stables. It will take a while, but this pressure adds up over time. And every once in a while, he sees a villager poking out and easily picks him apart. But Kasva now going to try and raid in. Actually, he might have timed this perfectly. Beasty's about to expose his wood line. So you might get some injuries in onto the English villager count, but it's going to be hard to get a definitive blow.
It indeed is going to be hard. There are some longbows as well, and their rate of fire is also increased in the aura. So there is one villager going down, but every horseman that Kasva loses is going to be increasingly difficult to replenish because his eco is under so much pressure. You see, he's venturing out to the berries to the north right now, trying to salvage something out of this, but the siege engineering upgrade is already coming in.
And so many dead horsemen. And look at the detail that matters here. Another outpost goes down. Kasva, he's just being put into prison. He's barely got anywhere to run and hide anymore. As you said, the siege engineering soon to come out, and this is looking all up for Beasty at the moment. I don't even know if Kasva really has anything left. I mean, the horseman army is more or less depleted. Even Lombos are standing and fighting. They just don't care. The Khan gets picked off as well. This villager line to the east is very risky. You see a double archer range being dropped now, but I feel like you're running out of time fast. The scout, I don't think he saw it. Look at the vision on the scout from Beasty. He almost spots out the Gurt. If he ever sees that, this game is going to be lights out for Kasva. And I think he might have seen it. We'll find out in the coming moments. It's really tough.
Yeah, that's a big question mark. If he sees those lumberjacks, it's probably game over. Ranges are coming up, but at this point, the numbers advantage is just so much in the favor of Beasty. He's got 22 army as opposed to 0. And Kasva's going to need a lot of time to get those archers going. And I think it's just going to be a flat-out siege push towards those berries.
Yeah, Kasva has the eyeballs on this. He sees what is obnoxiously being built on his base and calls GG without hesitation. What a play coming out from Beasty. Now to put himself up once again, 2 points over Kasva, and the score will update to 3-1. He shows us exactly how England can dominate Mongols. And this time, unlike yesterday, there were never horsemen to be seen for the English player. You know what? We're getting ahead of ourselves. We need to resolve this series first, which means we are going to get into game number 5 between Beasty and Kasva as we take to the Mongolian Heights.
Spawning in on the left side, we're going to have Beasty playing as the Delhi Sultanate in blue, and to the right, it is going to be Kasva handling the English in red.
Seems fitting, right? Like, I never like these games where you get in and for some reason England's blue. It's not right, you know? Especially when it's France versus England. There's just, like, mentally in my mind, it's like a blocker. I'm like, something's gone wrong with the generation here. Not the map generation, just the Civ generation. But yeah, straight away, we are going to see a shift out. So Beasty is going to move out and drop that dock. One detail I expect very different from his build order compared to what we saw yesterday from Ho Defex in this matchup. I expect him to be dropping an outpost quicker than what we saw out of Kasva's last opponent, because he understands this matchup. Beasty has done this countless times by now. Mongolian Heights specifically, he understands that, like, if one Civ isn't designed to play onto the docklands, he's going to look to counter your dock play. So you need to prep a defense for that.
Exactly. In fact, a preemptive tower behind that dock would actually be immensely helpful. So far, it looks like we have 2 scouts for Kasva. I only count 1 scout at this point for Beasty, though. Of course, the player that's not prioritizing the water is going to focus on collecting sheep a lot more. But Beasty has to be happy with the amount of sheep that he's able to collect. In fact, there's a second scout for him, although that's very unsuccessful collecting sheep.
Yeah, he sent it all the way to the back. He went for a little bit unorthodox of a move. Like, he shifted along the coast and weirdly enough found none on the southeast side of the map. But then he's looking to shift into, like, his own backlands to find a few. I like the move in, the snaky move. The amount he's taken away from Kasva, actually, just this one scout has already gathered up 13 sheep, which is just nuts. Very important this matchup as well, because if you're stripping any of this away from Kasva, it cripples his timing. Because we said that when you play England, you don't play dock, which means you're heavily reliant on these sheep to boost your eco until you're prepped for a farmland switchover. So actually a really big detail that he snatched away so many sheep from Kasva's side of the map.
Indeed. Like, Kasva's got 7 trailing him. He's probably going to have like 8 or so, but underneath his town center, there is none. And on the other side of the map, that scout is also carrying just 3. So Kasva isn't going to be super disappointed with the amount of sheep that he gathered, but if you compare it to what Beasty was able to acquire, and you combine it with the fact that he also has the fishing eco, Beasty's got a great head start against his opponent, and really, it was a great move from him to push the scout to Kasva's side and just focus on stealing as much from Kasva as possible, and they just focus on his side of the river at a later time.
Now, Beasty, I expect him in like the next minute to start constructing an outpost. For the moment, he just wants to churn out enough of these fishing boats. He understands that he shouldn't have to race this outpost too quickly because Kasva shouldn't actually be prioritizing his own. So, you know, at this point, I think everyone kind of knows the timing they're looking at for an England player to crack feudal. You want to prep the outpost for about 20 seconds before the average so that you definitely get that outpost complete and it won't be denied. And if you can get it right near where this stone outcropping is on the east side, it essentially protects your entire fishing eco, and there's not really any way that Kasva can assassinate these ships.
Council just now coming in here for Kasva, whereas for Beasty, of course, he is not going up to feudal age yet. There's a big investment for his fishing eco, and as you said, there's the tower coming in. He knows that timing. He needs to know that the English will reach feudal age at around that 4-minute mark. So you gotta start constructing your outpost a tiny bit before that, just to make sure that you maximize the amount of fishing ships that you have, but also make sure that you have that tower going up, and that tower is vital because that is going to prevent the longbows from harassing you, although there might be an angle that they could potentially use. Like, to the right of that stone mine, you might be able to harass the fishing ships and be outside the range of that tower.
Yeah, it's kind of funky. It feels like BC is trying to protect the northern fishing points as well. I think that's why he's gone for this kind of like half-half situation. He probably could have actually postured this outpost a bit further forward. Kind of surprised he didn't actually, but I guess he just wants to keep kind of congested close to the coastline. He might drop a second outpost to the south. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this village is going to do this on the southern side of the crossing right now. That should deny any easy access, but for the moment, he's just going to continue to churn out those boats because, of course, you always want to keep non-stop production out of your dock. And obviously, we always do expect the player not playing dock to actually reach feudal a lot quicker. It's why England does this, because England really is about how fast can I get feudal. And when you play these water hybrid maps, you know you're going to be over a minute, probably easily over 2 minutes ahead of your opponent in terms of tech up. And the whole idea is maximizing the efficiency of your longbow early to exploit that detail.
Kasva up to feudal age, and he's going to start pumping out those longbows. Whereas on the other side, Beasty is about to go up. He already has a mosque up, so he started to get efficient production. And once he gets that and he gets to feudal age and starts pumping out the archers, that's where things could get a little concerning for English, because the Delhi, we have seen that it's so powerful as a civilization, even on open maps like Arabia. Give them an untouched fishing eco, and they will be absolute juggernauts.
Yeah, and while you can touch the fishing eco for the moment, like, BC has some safe farm, because this is why he's done this outpost play. Oh, I'm being fired upon by these longbows. I'm going to shift to the north side. This is actually really smartly played. It's actually next level. A lot of players would have put it one side or the other, as we were talking about. The reason he doesn't do it in this situation is because, well, these outposts wouldn't be able to snipe the longbows. The longbows would easily still be able to snipe the fishing boats. So this kind of gives a leverage balance where you shift across the other side, and all of a sudden these longbows have to run all the way around the AoE range of the outpost to reach your fishing boats again. Well, for the moment, they're doing a damn good job of slowly picking apart these fishing boats. Won't be quick enough to sink even one, though. But the outpost is established, so Kasva should have a way across, and he will look to probably get very aggressive off the back of this, understanding that timing around what we've been talking about with Delhi, which is usually the military efficiency, when they start to come online very hard and can actually outscale the English.
One fishing ship goes down over here. You gotta love the move that you garrison the 2 scouts you have in that tower. You don't want to waste the villagers doing that, so you just go for the scouts garrisoned into the tower. And it looks like the fishing ships were trying to intercept those archers crossing the river. Feudal Age is almost in for Beasty, but he's in a bit of a troublesome spot because those gold and stone miners are wide open to the longbows to kill.
Yeah, and you really have nothing to defend them with right now. So now you got the tech up, but you need to get either stable and archery range. I really want to see stable in this situation. I think you just need to play tempo control with your speed to just essentially play defensive against the longbows and then flank attack to the north and the south forwards, because you do have a lot of influence now, because you can see that Kasva is hard invested in this central crossing. Although you can't deny him there, you can outmaneuver him, and that is why Kasva instantly drops the racks, not in his base, but at the crossing, so he's able to reinforce quickly and has a safe fallback point.
Yeah, that's a great position. So he's sort of doing the same thing that Beasty did to him in the previous game. It is much easier to reinforce, and really the best way to avoid a counterattack from Beasty with the horsemen is just to force the issue yourself, pressure your opponent. Beasty was mining some stones, so he probably can get arrow slits on his towers, but the longbow is also finding a beautiful angle to get behind the fishing ships here. Perfect placement for Kasva.
This is worst case scenario, right? Like, you were prepped for the Lombos on their side of the river, but now that they're here, you don't have any outposts to defend yourself. You're being picked apart, and you've got so many fishing boats that can be exploited as Kasva continues to snipe them out and force them up north. You're going to need to react very soon. The good news, at least for Beasty, is he has a lot of sheep underneath his TC. So losing this expansion isn't going to stunt him entirely, but it is definitely slowing him because I don't really feel like he got the full return on investment he was looking for initially pushing into these fishing boats.
And because he's getting forced away from his gold mine as well, he can't even afford a Dow to add some beef to that navy, because the fishing ships, while they can fire arrows, they're not particularly powerful once you match up against this many longbows. But if you could get 1 or 2 Dows on that water side, you could do a ton, and now the horsemen will be able to catch those longbows off guard. This could be a great fight for Beasty.
Yeah, this is what I was waiting for. This is the critical detail. The horsemen moving in, maybe a little bit prematurely. If they were here as 4, it would be even quicker, but they will clean up in the end, and this will get rid of that annoying thorn on your side. Kasva doesn't have that patrol force on your side of the bank anymore, and it's unlikely he's going to do it again anytime soon because you've shown horsemen. He will, however, have the thumbs up that going into the racks was the right call, and he will now start to prep those spearmen.
But this is where you're starting to leverage that fishing eco. At this point, it's 600 food per minute for Beasty, so while a couple of fishing ships were taken down, ultimately Kasva loses a significant portion of his forces, and we are getting to the stage of efficient production indeed. We're seeing that already come in for Beasty. He's got the sheep working for him, and he's got the fishing eco working, and there's just no sign of him trying to just play this one slow and get to Castle Age. I think he wants to go full feudal at this point.
Yeah, you can feel like he's got a strong arm point to leverage from. Like, especially when you see this racks dropped on the ford, you can see his plan. He moves in with the horseman. The arrow slits upgrade hasn't even come out yet. This could actually be devastating for Kasva. Chase in past the one spearman onto the Lombos. We'll turn around to address that now. Yes, you get bonus damage, but you have to last long enough to really get the value, which is why he prioritizes it out. More spearmen are at least being produced. Horsemen aren't really addressing the key issue, which is the Lombos. And I feel like Beasty, he has achieved his goal here. Look what he's doing on the crossing. He just wanted to buy time, buffer the attention, and then get his own walling down. The problem is the arrow slits upgrade is going to be there, and his villager is going to be sniped out before he walls it off entirely.
Yeah, that's an absolute pain for him at this point. He needed that walling to be done, or at least set up the foundation so units can't just freely cross. He's going to limit the movement of the opponent, so it's not going to be as easy as it used to be to cross the river, and he managed to wall off the north as well. South is also walled off, so he nearly managed to wall off the entire river, let alone that 2 tiles out there. But the problem for him, as you said, is that those 2 tiles that are still open could actually prove fatal.
Yeah, the question now is whether Beasty, off the back of this, decides that it's actually better value to invest in a second dock and escalate his eco. That is an option available to him now that he's secured the northern ford, which means he always has a way for the horsemen to wrap around the back and punish the Lombos for just trying to snipe out these boats. We'll see if he does that in probably the next minute. I think if he doesn't drop a dock by, say, like 11.5 minutes, he's just going to be full, like, land hoy ahead. And with the archer range being dropped, that does look like that's going to be the case in the back of his base.
Blacksmith already up for Beasty as well. He's coming in with the upgrades. Currently has no scholar garrisoned in those mosques out here. Where did those scholars go? Oh yeah, they're going for the sacred site, and Wolf is there, the bitey infantry, chewing away at that scholar, but the horsemen will be there to save him, so no harm done.
Hey, plenty of harm done. That's 30 health. Nah, he'll be fine. Can you imagine if actually Guy infantry got upgraded as they killed people, like a kind of promotion thing, like you're playing an RPG. Like, yeah, bitey infantry killed 3 troops. Okay, now it's like Swole bitey infantry. It does 8 damage per bite. Man, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to complicate Age of Empires. I mean, you know, I come from a MOBA background. I've got this obsession with like Warcraft and Dota. I want it. I want to level them up. Promotions like Red Alert style. You kill enough troops, all of a sudden you get promoted and heal. Okay, I'm creating a weird monstrosity. I'm gonna stop. Next thing you know, I'll be asking for those bear infantry I was talking about before.
Yeah, you can upgrade wolves to bears, that's for sure. The question is, how do you upgrade deer? Because the deer can't kill anything. Deer is your level 0 bite infantry, I guess.
Well, like, because deer can't kill anything, you can just make, like, a ludicrous upgrade in case a bug ever occurs. So if a deer ever somehow kills something, it just becomes the Sasquatch. It's like a Yeti or something, right? It just randomly evolves into Arceus. There it is. It evolves into Arceus. And then changes the entire game into Pokemon. Okay, we've gone off topic here because we better focus because Kasva is trying to get through the walls now. He's got a few spearmen here, plenty of lombos, which means he's not going to be deterred. And he will look for access to Beasty's base again. However, Beasty has put a lot of time, is now starting to push out the archers with the double blacksmith as well. Is going to get some of these tech ups ready before the fight takes place.
And he's going to have a Dao on the river as well, and that's going to be impactful because compared to the fishing ships, that's going to deliver a big punch to those spears, and ultimately the goal here for Beasty is to eliminate the spears. Obviously, he needs to be careful not to run into the range of the tower, because the tower does a tremendous amount of damage to combat vessels. As you see, there's just 2 volleys coming out, and that Dao is half dead. But you're just trying to force back those spears as long as possible, buy yourself time to build up your archer numbers.
Yeah, Dao really is the most poopy of poopy archer ships, isn't it? It's like... I think if you had a tier list, all the pros would actually put it as the worst archer ship out of all of them. And you're kind of seeing why. Like, it has terrible range, has terrible armor, its health pool's not that good. The only thing it's really good at is running away, which is a very situational advantage. Anyway, fight underway. Dao not really targeting out what needs to. The spears need to be addressed. It does bait the archers into the spears for a moment, but Dao will be sunk. So that's a costly investment for Beasty just down the drain. However, it has bought a little bit of time to build even more of these archers. And remember, because he has that efficient production, he's matching the pace of the lombos. In fact, he's exceeding it with the second archery range, now pushing out 4 archers to the 2 every 30 seconds. And this is where it gets worrying for Kasva. He does at least have a choke point to hold for the moment, but Horseman will move in, and that is a freebie. Battering Ram just gone in the blink of an eye. He's going to be forced away as the Dao scares him off. Spearmen need to garrison. Horsemen are going to chase in. The Spearmen actually need to defend these lombos, but it looks like Beasty's paranoid. He will be backing up with the Horsemen for the moment.
And he's also capping the sacred site, or at least he's about to cap the sacred site on the right side. So he's leveraging the fact that Kasva's got limited mobility here, and he's focusing in the middle. So just one horseman, that scholar, should be able to capture that sacred site for the time being. And behind that, of course, the eco for Beasty is just an absolute juggernaut. As you said, efficient production is kicking in. Just one stable, one range. Actually, there's a second range now going for him, so he can just flood those archers out. Double blacksmith, though, so he's grabbing all those all-important feudal age upgrades as well. I feel like Kasva's window here is closing. Like, he's getting another ram going, but this is just taking too much time.
Yeah, it's like, you have to think about this logically. Like, the efficient production turns you into the council hall, right? But then you've got 2 of them. So you're pushing out 4 archers every time your opponent's pushing out 2 lombos. It is incredibly oppressive right now for Kasva. Kasva literally has, like, a window of, I'd say, 2 minutes to do something impactful. At which stage, Beasty just escalates past him because he's got this fishing eco which has succeeded. Now he's outproducing you militarily, and he's countering you out quite nicely with this composition. And because it's lombos versus archers, if you ever fall back, you're going to lose the lombos. The archers can chase you down, and you'll also lose the forward racks, and that means your game will be more or less over. And that's exactly why he moves in with the ram. Trying to get rid of the outpost, forces the fishing boats away, but Beasty doesn't have to care about this. He's still escalating. If we look at the military side of things, Beasty at the golden 69 number, and meanwhile, Kasva trailing down at 38.
And behind this Beasty also has a sacred site trickling in gold for him, so he can slowly progress towards Castle Age. Obviously, he's focusing his food and wood into making army, but the fact that he's basically not consuming gold and he's got that gold trickle will set him up very nicely if he wants to go into Castle Age. But I feel like first he's gonna have to take this fight here because Kasva will attempt another crossing, probably last in the game, depending on how this goes.
Double battering ram this time. One of them's just going to be burnt down in the blink of an eye. The Daos force you away. You can't even try to protect against the Horseman. Horseman chasing in now into the secondary battering ram, and Kasva just standing it there, forfeiting it. He's trying to get down a secondary outpost, but I don't even know if that's going to be good enough. The count is just so damn high. Beasty will back off for the moment, but you have to question whether Kasva is happy with this. He was hoping maybe be able to bait his opponent underneath the outpost and get a good trade because he just lost 600 wood in the blink of an eye.
One unappreciated thing is that, as we discussed before, the Horsemen actually received a bonus damage versus, or a bonus damage increase versus siege weapons here with their torches. And that is actually not only relevant against weapons like cannons or mangonels, it's also relevant against rams. So it made it much easier for these Horsemen to clean up those otherwise very expensive rams out here.
And we're just seeing the weakness of England when you're forced into this kind of like choke point and you can't play wide, right? That's one of the downsides of England. You're really strong pushing 1 point, but you can only push 1 point. And look how that's affected him. If you look up in the north, you notice in the center, there's only these Daos here. Where did the fishing fleet go? Beasty set up a northern dock. He's been fishing up here. He's still boosting his economy vastly beyond Kasva's, and Kasva can never come up here to address this because if he does, he'll be flooded by horsemen in the center that will head straight for his main base, or even just cut off your main army from behind.
And behind this, Beasty has both sacred sites, so he technically started the sacred site countdown, but That's not so relevant for us. The bigger thing is that he's coming up to Castle Age with the compound of the defender, so he's gonna be able to start making those stone fortifications and fortify the river at this point.
Yeah, and the crazy part is, like, Beasty wasn't even necessarily efficient about this. I think he could have capped that Sacred Site possibly, like, 2 minutes plus before, because he had a Horseman down there waiting to guard. But he just didn't care, right? It's just a natural occurrence of the game. Castle Age doesn't need to be rushed. You just need to keep pressure up and defend in feudal. And now, he doesn't need to defend anymore, right? It's the dawning of a new age. The Delhi Empire is about to rise. As with this many troops about to be juiced up, and all of these racks being dropped, you have to question if Kasva is about ready to hit the GG and call this a series.
It's gonna be a big question indeed, especially because it looks like now Beasty's crossing the river. He doesn't have the veterancy upgrades just yet, but the moment he grabs that, he's gonna have a massive power spike over here, also supported by some Dows. And it looks like Kasva's gonna have to leave the safety of those towers as well.
Yeah, march in. Horsemen riding in. They spot the villagers. They'll look to butch them. Instead, they turn on the longbows. Longbows more important. Archers getting in range, trying to look for the spears. Attack speed is working for Kasva at the moment, but these spears, their numbers are depleting fast, and the horsemen looking so healthy. Still over 20 of them ready to ride in even deeper. And this is without the tech ups. The tech ups that will be coming very soon. Kasva might just lose the army before then and end up tapping out, as it looks like it's a clear and emphatic victory in the center of a Beasty. And Kasva has no way in hell of getting back in this game.
Absolutely no way out there. There is just an absolute slaughter, and Kasva's dropping him literally pretty heavily. Here is the GG, and with that, Kasva is out of the N4C Qualifiers. Even without those upgrades, Beasty's army just wiped out all his forces from the battlefield.
Didn't even look close in the end. So trivial of an effort for Beasty to just overcome Kasva. Kasva, we warned against this, right? Like, this tactic, this strategy is very effective against players who aren't familiar with the powers of England. Beasty is. This guy likes to yell Strailbora more than most people. He's not going to fall for the same thing that worked for you yesterday against Ho-Ho Defex. And I think the critical detail comes down to that outpost placement. The outpost placement that is the result of hundreds and hundreds of games played and understood in Age of Empires 4. We talked about the whole idea of dropping on that side. I want to see that. He actually outsmarts me easily because he says, okay, I can drop it on this side, but I don't need to drop it near the outcropping like Pigeon's talking about. I don't need to worry about the crossing. Instead, I'm going to put it in a position between two different fishing points so that anytime longbows come, the superior range doesn't matter because I'll shift the fishing boats to the other side and you have to wiggle your way around the annoying range of my outpost to even try and reach the ships again. That small detail escalates so much of this game. I warned against it. I said Beasty is very, very talented, understands Mongolian Heights inside out. I've seen him play Mongolian Heights more than most players have. And I had a feeling that this was coming, and I wasn't too surprised by the outcome in the end. Despite the fact that Kasva understands England very well, I think he still lacks gaps in his knowledge when you talk about this higher level play, where you understand what you're meant to do against Delhi, but when your opponent, the Delhi player, understands what's coming, right? What is the next step? It's kind of that back and forth dance. And, you know, we can talk about how easy a top-level player can win a game that is perfect from start to finish, but the signs of a truly great player is when you start throwing obstacles in his course, does he trip over or does he jump over them and continue towards the finish line? And that is exactly why Beasty takes this, in the end, very decisively 4-1.